In 1901, a one-armed train robber in New Mexico ate a hearty breakfast, took a bath, and told the guards he was ready to die at any hour. Hours later, the rope took his head clean off. But what he chose to eat that morning tells you more about the man than anything he ever stole. Number 15 on this list asked for something so strange the warden thought it was a joke. And number 1 requested a meal so enormous it would have fed the entire cell block. These 30 last meals span 2 centuries of American justice, from dusty frontier gallows to federal death houses. Some men ordered feasts, others could barely swallow a bite, and a few made requests that still haunt the guards who served them. Before we start, hit that subscribe button, because this list gets darker the higher we climb. Let's count them down. Number 30, hardtack and black coffee. When cattle rustler George Shea climbed the scaffold in Montana Territory in 1864, the Vigilance Committee had not given him much time to prepare. He got what the camp had on hand: hardtack, that dense cracker soldiers cursed during the Civil War, and a tin cup of black coffee brewed over an open fire. Shea chewed the hardtack slowly, washing it down in small sips while 24 men watched from horseback. The vigilantes who ran Montana's mining camps did not believe in ceremony. They believed in rope, but even they allowed a man his last mouthful. Shea finished every crumb, set down the cup, and walked to the cottonwood tree without another word. Hardtack was the taste of the frontier itself, bland, unforgiving, built to survive when nothing else could. Number 29th, sourdough, biscuits, and bacon. Horse thief. William Palmer got his final meal in a Wyoming jail cell in 1871. The sheriff's wife cooked it herself: 2 sourdough biscuits, 4 strips of bacon, and a glass of buttermilk. Palmer reportedly told the deputy it was the best meal he had eaten in 6 months, which said more about life on the run than it did about the cooking. Sourdough starter traveled in saddlebags across the frontier. Cowboys kept it alive for years, feeding it flour and water like a pet. For Palmer, those biscuits were a last taste of the trail life that had brought him to the noose. When Rufus Buck was hanged at Fort Smith, Arkansas in 1896, Judge Isaac Parker's court had already sent more than 80 men to the gallows. Buck and 4 members of his gang terrorized Indian Territory for 13 days, robbing stores, holding up travelers, and assaulting settlers. Their rampage ended when a posse of Creek Light Horse police tracked them down. In his cell the night before, Buck ate fried chicken and cornbread. He left behind a photograph with a poem scrawled on the back. The chicken was cooked in the jail kitchen by a trustee. Simple food for the end of a very short, very violent life. Number 27, steak and eggs. The classic American last meal appeared early in the hanging tradition and never left. Outlaw Bill Longley, the Texas gunfighter who claimed to have killed over 30 men, was hanged in Giddings, Texas in 1878. By most accounts, he ate steak and eggs the morning of his execution, a meal that cost the county about 40 cents. Longley spent his final hours writing letters and reading his Bible. His last words acknowledged the debt he owed for his reckless life. The steak was tough and the eggs were fried hard, but Longley ate every bite. Men facing the rope rarely complained about the cooking. Number 26, whiskey and cigars. Not every last meal was food. When Henry Plummer, the crooked sheriff of Bannock, Montana, was dragged from his cabin by vigilantes in January 1864, he begged for his life and asked for time to pray. The men who hanged him offered whiskey instead. Plummer drank and smoked while they built the scaffold. He asked for a long drop so he would die quickly, and the vigilantes obliged. Plummer had been running a gang of road agents while wearing a badge, robbing gold shipments and murdering witnesses. The whiskey warmed him against the freezing Montana night. The cigar was still smoldering when they cut him down. Number 25, beans, and salt pork. Crawford Goldsby, known as Cherokee Bill, was one of the most feared outlaws in Indian Territory. He killed his first man at 18 and never stopped. Sentenced to hang at Fort Smith in 1896, Goldsby spent his last evening eating beans and salt pork from a tin plate. He told a guard he had no last words because he had not come there to make a speech. Judge Parker's gallows had been rebuilt the year before, a sturdy oak platform that could hang 12 men at once. Cherokee Bill dropped through the trap alone. The beans were cold by the time they cleared his plate from the cell. Number 24, roast beef and potatoes. When Tom Horn sat in the Cheyenne jail in 1903, awaiting execution for the murder of a 14-year-old boy, he spent his final days braiding a rope from horsehair. The former Pinkerton detective and hired assassin ate roast beef and potatoes for his last supper. Horn had tracked Geronimo for the Army and hunted rustlers for the Wyoming cattlemen. He treated killing as a business proposition and said so plainly. The roast beef was served on a ceramic plate. Horn ate methodically, like a man accustomed to eating alone on the range. He was hanged the next morning. The horsehair rope he braided in his cell survives in a museum today. Number 23, tamales and coffee. Augustin Chacon, the Mexican bandit who terrorized the Arizona-Sonora borderlands, was hanged in Solomonville, Arizona in 1902. He reportedly asked for tamales and strong black coffee for his final meal. Chacon had escaped from jail twice before and killed at least 15 men by his own count. When asked for last words on the scaffold, he launched into a 30-minute speech in Spanish, confessing to some crimes and denying others. The crowd listened in silence. Tamales were the food of his childhood, corn masa and chili wrapped in husks, steamed until tender, a taste of home before a long drop into nothing. Number 22, apple pie and milk. Not every outlaw facing the rope was a hardened killer. Some were young men who made one terrible mistake. A 19-year-old farmhand, James Andrews, was hanged in Ohio in 1888 for the murder of a neighbor during a robbery gone wrong. The jailer's wife baked him an apple pie and brought a pitcher of fresh milk. Andrews ate 2 slices and left the rest for the other prisoners. Witnesses said he cried quietly while he ate. The pie was made with early autumn apples, tart and sweet under a lattice crust. It was the kind of pie his own mother might have baked, and everyone in that jail knew it. Number 21st, fried catfish and hush puppies. Along the Mississippi River bottoms, catfish was the food of the poor, the resourceful, and the desperate. River pirate James Ford, who operated near Cave-in Rock, Illinois, in the early 1800s, reportedly enjoyed fried catfish as one of his regular meals while awaiting frontier justice. Catfish pulled from muddy rivers and rolled in cornmeal before hitting the skillet was a meal that tied together the entire lower Mississippi frontier. The hush puppies, fried balls of cornbread batter, soaked up the grease and filled the belly. It was a riverman's supper, served on a riverman's final night. Number 20, venison stew. In the mountain territories where beef was scarce and deer were plentiful, venison stew appeared on more last meal plates than any official record shows. Convicted murderer Jake Sturgis ate venison stew with wild onions in a Colorado jail cell in 1879 before walking to the gallows at dawn. The stew had simmered overnight on a cast iron stove in the sheriff's office. Sturgis ate from a wooden bowl with a tin spoon. The meat was tender, falling apart in the broth, seasoned with nothing but salt and whatever herbs the deputy's wife could find growing wild behind the courthouse. Number 19, oyster stew. For outlaws captured in port towns or along the coasts, oysters were not a luxury. They were common, cheap, and available by the barrel. In the 1850s, before refrigeration changed everything, oyster stew appeared on jail tables from New Orleans to San Francisco. Convicted murderer Albert Hicks, a pirate who killed 3 men aboard a sloop in New York Harbor, ate oyster stew and bread the night before he was publicly hanged on Bedloe's Island in 1860. Thousands of spectators watched from boats in the harbor. P.T. Barnum reportedly paid for Hicks's death mask. The oyster stew was creamy, rich with butter and milk, and Hicks emptied the bowl. First pattern break. Here's where the story takes a turn. The tradition of the last meal in America did not start with compassion. It started with superstition. Ancient custom held that if you fed a condemned man before his death, his ghost could not return to haunt the living. In German tradition, the executioner and the prisoner shared a feast together the night before, a final act of civility before the blade or the rope. When the tradition crossed the Atlantic and reached the American frontier, it took on a different character. Frontier sheriffs were practical men. A man who had eaten was a man who was calm. A calm man walked to the gallows without a fight. A fight at the scaffold meant chaos, and chaos meant the crowd might turn. So the meal served a purpose beyond mercy. It was crowd control disguised as kindness. By the early 1800s, the last meal was standard practice in prisons across the United States. But on the frontier, where justice was rough and jails were often nothing more than a room with a padlock, the meal depended entirely on what the sheriff had on hand or what the sheriff's wife was willing to cook. Some men ate like kings, others chewed jerky in the dark and called it supper. Number 17. Ham and red-eye gravy. In the Appalachian Hill Country, where feuds burned hotter than the stills that fueled them, ham and red-eye gravy was the taste of home. Convicted killer Ellison Hatfield, cousin to the famous Devil Anse, ate country ham and red-eye gravy with biscuits on the morning of his sentencing. The gravy was made the old way, coffee poured into the ham drippings and scraped until it turned dark and bitter. 1 cup of coffee's worth of liquid, simmered with the salt and fat of the ham, created something that tasted like the mountains themselves, smoky, strong, unforgettable. Number 16. Peach cobbler. When the law caught up with stagecoach robber Milton Sharp in California in 1880, he was sentenced to hang for murder. Sharp reportedly requested peach cobbler for his last meal, made with tinned peaches and a biscuit crust. The cobbler arrived warm, the crust golden and crumbling, the syrup pooling thick and sweet around the edges. Sharp ate it with his fingers. Tinned peaches were one of the great luxuries of the frontier, shipped from eastern canneries to general stores across the West. A single tin might cost a day's wages. For a man about to die, it was worth every penny someone else paid. Number 15. A single raw onion. Not every last meal request made sense to the men who granted it. Convicted murderer Asa Bates, hanged in Kansas in 1879, asked for nothing but a raw onion and a piece of bread. The jailer thought it was a joke. Bates ate the onion like an apple, biting through the layers, tears streaming down his face. Whether those tears came from the onion or from something deeper, no one in that jail dared ask. He finished every bite, wiped his mouth with his sleeve, and told the sheriff he was ready. The bread went untouched. Number 14. Fried pork chops and applesauce. The pairing of pork and applesauce was standard fare in American farmhouses through the 1800s. The sweetness of the apple cut the richness of the fat, and the combination was cheap enough to serve on any table. Outlaw Frank Butler, hanged in Indian Territory in 1890, ate fried pork chops and applesauce with boiled greens on his last night. Butler had killed a deputy U.S. Marshal during a botched arrest. The pork chops were thick-cut and fried crisp in their own lard. The applesauce was made from dried apples reconstituted with water and sugar. Simple food, a farmer's son's last supper. Number 13. Sardines and crackers. Some men wanted nothing elaborate. Convicted killer James Brown, hanged in Nevada in 1883, asked for a tin of sardines and a sleeve of soda crackers. The jailer obliged. Brown ate sitting cross-legged on his cot, layering sardines onto crackers with the precision of a man who had done this 1,000 times in mining camps and bunkhouses across the West. The oil from the sardines soaked into the crackers and dripped onto the cell floor. Brown licked his fingers clean when he was done. It was a prospector's meal, portable and efficient, eaten by men who lived rough and expected nothing better. Number 12. Chicken and dumplings. In the Deep South, chicken and dumplings was the meal that meant someone cared enough to spend an afternoon cooking. When convicted murderer Henry Campbell was hanged in Georgia in 1887, his mother brought a pot of chicken and dumplings to the jail. The sheriff allowed it. Campbell ate 3 bowls while his mother sat on the other side of the bars watching. The dumplings were thick and heavy, the broth rich with chicken fat, the meat falling off the bone. When he finished, Campbell handed the pot back through the bars and thanked her. She carried that empty pot home, and according to family accounts, never cooked chicken and dumplings again. Second pattern break. Here is what nobody tells you about last meals on the frontier. The food was almost never good. Jail kitchens in the 19th century operated on budgets that would make a modern prison commissary look like a steakhouse. Most counties allocated between 10 and 25 cents per prisoner per day for food. That bought cornmeal, salt pork, and coffee, maybe beans if the budget stretched. When a condemned man asked for something special, the sheriff had to decide whether the county would pay for it or whether it would come out of his own pocket. Some sheriffs dipped into their own wallets. Others told the prisoner to pick from what was already in the kitchen. The famous feasts we imagine, the lobster tails, and the elaborate spreads. Those came later in the 20th century, when state prisons formalized the process and allocated specific budgets for final meals. On the frontier, a man's last supper depended on geography, the season, and whether the sheriff's wife was feeling generous. Number 10. Johnny cakes and molasses. Before pancakes conquered the American breakfast table, Johnny cakes ruled the frontier. Ground cornmeal mixed with water or milk cooked on a hot griddle until the edges crisped. Convicted horse thief Daniel Tolliver ate Johnny cakes drizzled with blackstrap molasses in a Missouri jail in 1875 before his dawn hanging. Molasses was the sweetener of the poor, thick and dark, with a mineral bite that sugar could never match. Tolliver poured it heavy, letting it pool on the plate, then sopped up every drop with a last Johnny cake. The griddle was still warm when the deputy came to take him to the scaffold. Number 9. Fried eggs and grits. Across the South, grits anchored the plate the way potatoes did in the North. Ground hominy cooked slow with water and butter until it turned creamy and smooth. Convicted murderer Lewis Powell, one of the Lincoln assassination conspirators, ate a simple breakfast of eggs and whatever was available in the old Arsenal Penitentiary before he was hanged on July 7, 1865. Powell had stabbed Secretary of State William Seward in his bed. He dropped through the trap alongside Mary Surratt, David Herold, and George Atzerodt. 4 ropes, 4 drops, 4 lives ended before lunch. Powell reportedly showed no fear. Whether or not he finished his meal that morning, history does not record with certainty. Number 8. Biscuits and sorghum syrup. Sorghum syrup was liquid gold in the rural South. Farmers pressed the cane in autumn, boiling the juice in long copper pans until it thickened into amber sweetness. Convicted murderer Bill Miner, the gentleman bandit who robbed stagecoaches with a polite tip of his hat, ate biscuits and sorghum before one of his many brushes with the law. Miner escaped from prison 3 times over his career and died in a Georgia penitentiary in 1913. He never got the hanging he probably deserved, but the biscuits and sorghum he requested in various jails across the West became part of his legend. Split a hot biscuit, pour the sorghum slowly, and close it like a book. That was the way it was done. Number 7. Roast chicken and corn on the cob. When summer executions coincided with harvest season, The food improved dramatically. Fresh corn, still in the husk, roasted or boiled until the kernels burst with sweetness, showed up on last meal plates across the Midwest and South. Combined with a roast chicken, it was practically a holiday meal. Convicted killer George Painter ate roast chicken and corn on the cob in an Indiana jail in 1894. The corn had been picked that morning from a field behind the courthouse. Painter ate it without butter, gnawing each cob clean, then stacking the bare cobs neatly on his plate. The jailer later said he had never seen a man eat corn with such concentration, as if that cob held every summer he would never see again. Number 6. Stewed rabbit and biscuits. Wild rabbit was free for the taking on the frontier, and many a condemned man requested the game he had survived on while running from the law. Stewed low and slow with wild onions, carrots if available, and thickened with flour, rabbit was tender, lean, and deeply flavored. Convicted outlaw Sam Ketchum's gang members reportedly ate rabbit stew in their camps across New Mexico before their various captures. The meat was shredded fine in the broth, stretched with biscuits that soaked up the liquid like sponges. A jackrabbit could feed 3 men if the cook knew what he was doing. On the frontier, most cooks did. Number 5. Beefsteak and fried potatoes. When Blackjack Ketchum ate his hearty breakfast on the morning of April 26, 1901 in Clayton, New Mexico, he told visitors he was ready to die at any hour. The train robber had terrorized the Southwest for a decade, robbing Colorado and Southern Railway trains with a gang that included his brother Sam. After a botched solo robbery left him with a shattered arm that had to be amputated, Ketchum was convicted and sentenced to hang. He ate a full breakfast, took a bath, and dressed in a black suit with the empty sleeve of his missing arm tucked neatly into the coat. His last words on the scaffold were simple: "Goodbye. Dig my grave very deep." The hanging went catastrophically wrong. The inexperienced executioners miscalculated the drop, and the rope severed Ketchum's head from his body. The crowd groaned. Some turned away. A doctor sewed the head back on before burial. Third pattern, break. Something strange happened in American jails starting around the 1880s. Condemned men began requesting meals from their childhood. Not fancy meals, not expensive meals. The foods their mothers made. Cornbread and milk, apple butter on fresh bread, chicken fried in a cast-iron skillet. Psychologists would later call this a regression response, a return to safety in the face of annihilation. But the sheriffs and jailers who witnessed it called it something simpler. They called it heartbreaking. A man who had killed without remorse, sitting in a cell, eating his mother's cornbread and crying. The meal did not redeem the man. Nothing could, but it revealed something the courtroom never showed, that somewhere beneath the violence, there had been a boy who sat at a kitchen table and felt safe. Number 3. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and lemon pie. The last public execution in the United States took place on August 14, 1936, in Owensboro, Kentucky. Rainey Bethia ate his last meal the evening before in Louisville: fried chicken, pork chops, mashed potatoes, pickled cucumbers, cornbread, lemon pie, and ice cream. He ate at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, then was transported by deputies to Owensboro through the night. By dawn, more than 20,000 people had gathered in an empty lot near the county garage to watch the hanging. Bethia was led to the scaffold. A black hood was placed over his head, and the trap was sprung. He was pronounced dead within minutes. The crowd surged forward. Reporters described the scene as chaotic and undignified. Within 2 years, Kentucky passed a law abolishing public hangings. Bethia's enormous last meal stands as one of the most thoroughly documented in American hanging history, a feast eaten in the shadow of the gallows by a man who knew every bite was counted. Number 2. A single olive with the pit still in. Victor Feger was the last man hanged by the federal government before the modern era. Convicted of kidnapping and murdering an Iowa doctor in 1960, Fager was executed at the Iowa State Penitentiary on March 15, 1963. For his last meal, he asked for one thing: a single olive with the pit still inside. He told the guards he wanted an olive tree to grow from his grave, a symbol of peace. The olive arrived on a plain white plate. Fager ate it, pit and all, then stood and walked to the gallows without another word. After the hanging, guards found the olive pit in his suit pocket. He had removed it from his mouth and saved it, perhaps hoping someone would plant it. No one did. The pit was buried with him. No tree ever grew. Number 1. The feast that shook a nation. In September 2011, convicted murderer Lawrence Russell Brewer, sentenced to death in Texas for a horrific hate crime, submitted a last meal request that would change American prison policy forever. He ordered 2 chicken fried steaks, smothered in gravy, a triple meat bacon cheeseburger, a large bowl of fried okra, a pound of barbecue. Here is the truth these 30 meals tell us. A last meal is never really about the food. It is about time. The time it takes to chew, the time it takes to swallow. Every second spent eating is a second spent alive. Some men stretched their meals for hours, savoring bites that tasted like nothing because fear had killed their appetite. Others ate with ferocious speed, wanting the meal behind them so the waiting would end. But all of them, from the cattle rustler chewing hardtack in Montana to the train robber eating breakfast in New Mexico, understood the same unspoken truth. When the plate is empty, they come for you. Share this video with someone who loves history. Tell me in the comments which meal on this list surprised you the most. I will be reading every single one.